I like stunning, I like shining, I like $1 million deals. Where's my pen? Bitch, I'm signing. I like those Balenciagas, the ones that look like socks. I like going to the Tula, I put rocks all in my watch. I like texts from my exes when they want a second chance. I like proving niggas wrong, I do what they say I can't. They call me Cardi, Cardi, banging body, spicy mommy, hot tamale, hotter than a Somali. Virgo, Ferrari, hop up the stoop, jump in the coupe, big dip on top of the roof, flexing on bitches as hard as I can, eating halal, driving a lamb. So that bitch, I'm sorry though, got my coins like Mario. Yeah, they call me Cardi B, I run this shit like cardio. Diamond District in the chain. Certified, you know.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. No Gordino with us this evening, just your usual host, me and Harry. Harry, welcome. How are you doing tonight, man?
Doing wonderful. How about yourself, man?
We got two kiddos under the weather. I'm starting to feel a little bit maybe the next victim, so I think we're going to keep this one a little bit short and sweet here this evening. But other than that, man, went for my first run today in probably 3 or 4 months. A couple of buddies downloaded like this Under Armour app where you can like challenge each other and it'll like track how far each person's ran in like a given period of time. So I did my first 1.5 miles in a little while, and it's going to be tough, but I'll keep you guys updated.
So you don't want to finish in last, maybe not necessarily first, but you don't want to be the guy at the end of the pack is what I'm understanding.
That's exactly it. Or I'll be the guy that's ran the shortest distance but done it the fastest, because then I can be like, oh, yeah, but that mile time, you know what I mean? It's all about that mile time.
It was a 4-minute mile, sub 4 minute mile.
Versus like 6, 8-minute miles, or what? They're all like already up to like 6 and 7 mile runs. So we'll see how this goes. But like I say, other than that, man, just another day at the office. We had talked about potentially maybe postponing tonight's show, but with so much news and everything this last week, it's like, how could we not do a show tonight? So
yeah, especially today. Normally we would type up some show notes, but I was a little under the weather myself, and it's a good thing I didn't, because we would have had to scrap half of it with news from UPSL, and SAFC dropping late this afternoon. So.
Yeah, so one of the exciting announcements, I guess, just to jump right into the show, we're going to skip a little bit of the high school news this evening. We'll catch back up with that next week and get everybody updated. Obviously, Central Catholic still playing in the tournament. They had a pretty impressive win on Monday. So best of luck to them as they continue there in the TAPS state playoffs. But just kind of jumping right into a little bit of semi-professional news here in San Antonio. We saw the announcement that the San Antonio Athenians are going to be taking on the Pumas Femenil from Liga MX on March 3rd. So they're, I hate to say inaugural match. What would you call it, Harry? What's a good word for this game that they've got coming up on March 3rd?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a first. To me, it's almost like a welcome back, or it's second impression, I guess you could say, because they took a season off after after I thought was a pretty successful first year, especially with fans in the attendance. I know on the pitch they just missed the playoffs, if memory serves me correct, and there was some shenanigans with the team from Houston, I believe, that took away some points that if they would have had those points, might have seen the season progress, if memory serves me right. But no, I'm looking forward to the Athenians coming back. And, it'll be a crowded women's soccer scene here in San Antonio, but I guess that goes with the men as well. So more soccer is always better.
And speaking of the men, and speaking of announcements in soccer here in San Antonio, it looks like we have the rebirth of a former San Antonio semi-professional club with the Corinthians announcement and them coming back. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Athenians, and I was out there at their practice here in a little bit, but I'm just curious kind of to get your thoughts when you first saw the announcement with the Corinthians. For those who aren't aware, this was a little bit before my time even. Walk everybody through just kind of that. Are you familiar with the backstory and the history of the Corinthians here in San Antonio, Harry?
I know they were here for a year. They actually played I want to say it was the Scorpions back in the Open Cup era.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
and
no.
So, and I think they were kind of a one season, and then they were gone, kind of gone the next season as well. But no, they played, a quality. I do think they've updated their badge, and I think they may have the best kit in San Antonio. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I really really love their new kit that they posted out on a couple of days after Valentine's Day. So to me, they used to play over on our side of town, on the northwest side of town here. If memory serves me right, they were actually building a facility for it, and then just they're here and gone, which unfortunately can happen with lower level teams for that here. So I don't know all the back drama of what happened, but I'm glad that they're back, because they were at least for the one, I think it was 1 year, maybe 2 years that they played. They had an imprint on San Antonio.
Yeah, so they kind of started off how it was explained to me, because as I mentioned, it was a little bit before my time. They did have the pinnacle, or kind of the climax there, with the Open Cup match versus the Scorpions. But it kind of started off just as like a Sunday League team, and then eventually just got more competitive and put some pieces in place and started winning some statewide tournaments and stuff like that. And, eventually made it, as you mentioned, all the way up there to the U.S. Open Cup match versus the Scorpions. So kind of a pretty neat story that, I kind of knew bits and pieces of, but, I don't know if my Sunday League team, it's a bit ambitious, but it's a good goal for a Sunday League team to eventually play against somebody like San Antonio FC out there at Toyota Field, but we're excited for them. They're still kind of trying to figure out what league they're going to play in. There's been some speculation around potentially the Corinthians joining the UPSL also. But, we were kind of just looking at that Hart Conference there and the number of teams that they have, and kind of how Matt Kalaw is wanting to set up this league. And it looks like that Central Hart Conference is pretty full, wouldn't you say?
Well, yes and no, because you got to remember, they've got 8 teams in it. So I think, the Premier Division, I think is what they have it called. Now, in the fall, there's going to be a second division, because Alamo City is going to be starting in there, in that division. So to me, there's room. Now they won't play spring, which kicks off in a couple months. But if they don't got a roster, it might be better to wait till August, September timeframe when typically the fall kicks off. So I think you give them a little bit more time to be able to build that roster, make sure they have everything set. But I think there is room, and especially if you got the promotion aspect involved, theoretically, you could have 4 or 5 teams in the area, but what's the odds of all 4 being up? For instance, let's say 4 San Antonio teams, if you had Alamo City, the Corinthians, Samba, and the Runners all in, the top conference. It could happen, but, most likely it would take a couple years to build up to that. And, you'd have to have, great success, which for San Antonio would be awesome to see.
Right. And obviously 8 teams is kind of the sweet spot right there, right? Because, that creates 16 games and then 2 seasons, 32-game seasons. So the numbers just kind of work out right there at that 8-team spot. And as you mentioned, with the Pro Rel, you'd have 2 teams moving up and 2 teams moving down, basically, is the way that they
want to say. We don't know how many would be moving up or moving down.
I spoke to Matt.
Oh, yeah, it would be 2.
He said they're looking at a number of 2 for the Pro Rel. And maybe that's just when they're first starting, but he did mention to me that they were looking
which would make sense, too.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, there's some good teams in that division, though. So you say, what are the odds of all 4 San Antonio teams making it? When you look at some of the teams that are there in that division and historically how strong they've been, it might be pretty difficult for all 4 teams to make it if you're only promoting 2 up, and dropping 2 down.
Right, and you'd have to have that consistency as well. You'd have to have that foundation to be able to do it. So, I would be for it because they're in different parts of the area. I think the Corinthians is going to be playing with the Athenians, 1604 on north side area, correct here?
Yeah, as you mentioned, they do have that complex, kind of right over there by actually where Juventus is building their academy, almost in that same general area behind Ingram Park Mall.
Oh, it's going to be so it's going to be closer to our side here.
It's right over there. Yeah, it's already there. They've got it's a turf field. It's not a huge complex or anything like that, but they're kind of dividing it up right now with Corinthians on one side, Athenians on the other. But yeah, it's a neat little setup, just kind of right there in the heart of a neighborhood, almost exactly like the Juventus Training Academy is going to be. So yeah, it's right over there.
Well, I think that if you look at European or South American or Central American, that's usually how it's done. Is especially for lower leagues, it's
in the neighborhoods,
and you build around that. And that's how you build that local base. So to me, like I said here, where it would go perfectly into
the pro rel,
into the pro rel, and like I said here, you could argue maybe the team that would be impacted the most would be the runners, because they do draw talent from this side of town as well. So Samba, I think, where they're more on the east and south side, I don't know how impacted that they would be, other than maybe a few of the kids from the west side or downtown might go more towards the Corinthians. But it would be interesting. I've always thought that the landing spot would be the Gulf Coast League.
And Pete's still looking at that as well.
But there's a lot more travel in there. And to me, that would be the thing that you'd have to look at the cost. I know, there's a team up in Austin, the Central Texas team, that does play it. So they're kind of on an island all by themselves out here. So to me, that's where I initially thought, because, initially it was thought that, hey, UPSL might not be an option. But if it is an option, like I said here, I think it would be a good thing, and for both to do it, especially as you're trying to build up the
here in Texas. Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes sense. They have a goal that they're trying to hit of 1,000 teams in the UPSL. Obviously, once Pro Rel is in place, so the only way you're going to hit that mark is, like you said, to start building those markets, and I think that would give them like 4 teams kind of total with the North End and the Heart for that championship, that 2 conference kind of tier already for the UPSL by adding that second San Antonio team in there. I think it's kind of already starting to take shape a little bit, not just for the Central Heart division, but up north as well.
Well, up north already got it. I think they've already got the 2 because I think here, I can pull it up here real quick here. They already have I think it's 6 teams in the top conference. Let me see how they have it labeled here.
Yeah, because we were looking at the conferences, and a lot of them are right there kind of at that 6-7 team mark where they're already kind of filling up. And like I said, that was kind of the answer that I got from Matt on just asking if there may be the potential of any more San Antonio teams, is that championship division is kind of where they're starting to look to add teams now outside of the ones that are already in the market.
Yeah, so there's 7 teams in the Pro Premier North Division.
Okay.
And there's 6 teams in the championship division.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, they are already filled up.
So they've already got 13 teams involved on that, where the Heart has 8. The conference that's still kind of behind is the South, because they've only got 6. So I haven't heard of any promotion and relegation talk with them as of yet. I think Matt's probably looking, with the success that he's had, going on north and even dipping into Oklahoma at this time here. There's a couple Oklahoma teams up north that are in the Pro Premier, and then, like I said, I think his goal right now is working down south. And this also does not include Keene, because from everything I understand, Keene is coming back. So, the fall, you're probably going to have a couple more teams that were in last year. And I think there was team up north. So I know of 2 teams. I forget what the name of the other one. I want to say it was not Dallas City, but one of the other teams up north that's taken the spring off and coming back in, or supposedly coming back in the fall. So I know there's 2 more teams that are scheduled to come back that are not playing in the spring. So that would give you Especially if they're, if I think Keene was in the north, right? Um, so that would give you another 2 teams up there. So that would be 9 and 6, 15 total teams without any other expansions.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we'll just have to wait and see kind of what goes on up there in the UPSL and everything. I know we spoke to Matt this evening, and he's going to come back on the show again soon. So me and you spoke about trying to get him on, obviously before the season starts. Sorry, I'm just seeing like my cat's tail shadow in the background here, and it's throwing me off a little bit. But yeah, so we'll get him back on the show before we start the season and get to talk to him again. So I know he was really looking forward to talking to you about some more pro rel. And as you mentioned, his new Central Conference manager is looking to try and add some additional teams right now and really build up that second tier. So I know, like you said, that is kind of primarily their focus.
And I do know, in other news has to do with Matt, is he had a little bit more duties added on with John stepping down, Rexroth stepping down as the women's conference leader or director there. So that was announced earlier this afternoon as well. So John sent out a release saying that with his commitments with Samba FC, that he wants to put more time and be able to devote to that job. And he wears a lot of hats with Samba, especially doing the men's and women's, and I believe they have academy as well that I don't think that he promotes a whole lot, but if memory serves me right, he's also got some academies that he works with, and I know he does
the high school coaching
as well. So his plate's pretty full, and like I said, I know he did a good job getting the league started. And the tweet from Matt is that he's going to work with the new UPSL central manager, on the men's side, while also focusing a little bit on the women's side. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that transition works for Matt. He isn't quite able to pull away from Texas as of yet.
Not quite. So he said, he'd make himself available to us for as long as he could. So we're going to hold him to that. And sounds like we might get to talk to him a few more times here in this upcoming UPSL season. But just kind of getting back to the Athenians, we're going to have some more information on the Athenians and obviously be following them this year. Upcoming match, March 3rd versus Pumas. We kind of speculated that, if there might be an international team that came to San Antonio, Athenians might be the one to bring them back here. Quite an announcement. We're going to leave it up to our fan or people that watch the show. We got to come up with a match or a name for this because, like I said, I keep wanting to say inaugural because it feels like almost an inaugural. They're coming back, type game. Rebirth. I like it. The rebirth of the San Antonio Athenians.
I should also say the same thing for the Corinthians as well.
That's true. So they've got that upcoming match on March 3rd. So tickets already on sale. They're $10. We've kind of been sharing the link on that. Mm-hmm. A few interesting stories, though. We're going to be bringing you guys some interviews. Benji is going to be actually kind of in charge of their media and stuff like that. So he's obviously said that anybody we want to talk to or anything like that, any kind of access that we need for that, he's more than willing to help us out with that. So Jessica Bell, obviously one of the big names who played for the Athenians that's back out on the pitch, suffered an injury in a friendly versus a all-women's military team after the Defenders Cup 2 years ago. And, always unfortunate to see an injury like that in a friendly that, you just kind of putting together for the good of the sport and everything. But it was really good to see her back out there on the field because she's been rehabbing for, like I say, about the last year and a half. She said that she can play okay, but, it still affects her sometimes and it still hurts sometimes. She said in the cold it almost feels better just because it's so numb that there isn't any pain there. But so she's still suffering through that. So it'll be interesting to watch her this upcoming season, kind of see, what she's able to do. She's had to kind of change the way that she plays a little bit. Not as much of a speedster anymore like she used to be, kind of lost a step there. So having to compensate in some different ways. But obviously another fan favorite, Michelle Hogan, who many may know as Billy Forbes' fiance. I don't think they've officially tied the knot yet. But
I thought they did.
Did they get married? And I should know this. I don't know why I don't know this, but
I was in Billy's last year in Phoenix.
Oh, that's why. Obviously,
not to rub it in, Billy, but
yeah, a lot of people would have attended, Billy. Thanks, man. I lost my invite in the mail because you were in Phoenix. But no, I think a lot of people are happy to see her back along with Billy. You know, they're kind of a soccer couple here in San Antonio there for a little while before moving out to Phoenix. So it was good to see her and catch up with her again. And now that she's back in San Antonio. And then Katie Ann and Kelly Lochte, obviously two other, UTSA players who play in there for the Athenians. So they've got a core group of players, probably 7 or 8 core players that came back. Isabel Valdez, who was the Mexican national player, is supposed to be coming back. She hasn't been able to return yet. So it's kind of cool seeing all the girls come back and everything. And should be interesting to follow them this season. Like I said, we'll be bringing you guys a lot more interviews and information and stuff like that with some of those players and just kind of trying to get some more information on what it's like.
And one thing that we might also want to do is I haven't heard of anything about the Blossoms at all recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I think it was Alamo City as well, was also looking at
a women's team,
the WPSL. Now there's also, it's not also, they are also playing in the UPSL. So that might be something that we kind of look at to see, how the other teams are coming along. Because that season kicks off, right?
April.
Typically in May.
Yeah. I think a lot of the trials and the practices and stuff like that, they'll start, kind of at the beginning of April and stuff like that. Obviously, they're already out there now kind of on Fridays and stuff like that in an informal. It's more of an informal capacity. If you want to come out and train, kind of thing. But yeah, we'll definitely be following up, not just with the Athenians, but with those other teams that you mentioned as well, because yeah, they definitely should be starting to practice and stuff like that. If not, having tryouts and everything. I know they're going to try and do some tryouts for the Corinthians this Saturday over there at Warrior Stadium. They have that partnership there with Cornerstone. That is very important to them. So that's kind of where the majority of their games are going to be played is there at Warrior Stadium, and that's where they're going to have their tryouts. So
it looks like the Blossoms do have it says here on their website here that will be held March 12th and 13th. So
12th and 13th.
It does show 2019. So yeah, it does show that they do also got some stuff coming up in less than a month away from here. But the problem with the Blossoms, looks to be the same as was last year with no social media presence. So,
well, in some of these teams, as we continue to see kind of the development, especially of these academy systems, I feel like, with the UPSL academy system that's kind of starting to take root and everything, I think you're going to see a lot of these teams that are focused a little bit more on some of their academy players and trying to get them time and chances and opportunities, which that's what they're there for. It's nothing against them, but they may not be as worried about public perception and stuff like that,
Yeah, and I think we ran into that last year with the Blossoms, where a lot of us assumed that a lot of the Athenian players would just roll over to there, and we know of a few that attempted, and it just for whatever various reasons it just didn't work out because the Blossoms were going more with players that they've known and developed as opposed to going the traditional route. And then I would assume Alamo City is going to be doing the same thing, where it's going to be that path, that path up to where, they can, hopefully be a feeder program into, other professional teams, whether it's San Antonio FC, or, other future teams that come in the area.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be, of utmost importance for these UPSL and, WPSL teams is to build, you talk about where you're going to pull your players from, not just geographically, but, developing these kinds of academies and feeder systems. That's, I think, where a lot of these teams, if we're going to have 4 teams in San Antonio, that's how you're going to kind of support those rosters, I feel like, Well, that's a lot of the UPSL and UPSLW news. Also, some announcements here with San Antonio FC, starting with the academy. I'm going to go check on Wyatt real quick, man, and just walk us through kind of that academy match and their recent success here against Houston.
We'll do so. Go take care of the young guy. So the academy team this past weekend had a pretty successful weekend with playing Houston Dynamo Youth. All three teams won. The SAFC U13 team won 4-0. The U14 team won 6-3, and the fourth ranked out of the U.S. Soccer Develop Academy SAFC under 15 won 4-1 with all there. So for that here, so I think the next time they're in action is next time they'll be in action will be, hold on 1 minute here. I think they're away, so that's why I didn't have it set up here. It is going to be. Oh, come on.
Yeah, because they will have that home game that you spoke about, the home games before the home opener.
Well, I know they're here the opening day, which
Right.
is March 9th.
Right.
But they have
A couple of weeks in between there.
It's not going through. Well, they actually play. Yeah, I believe the next home match that on there is going to be the March 9th.
Okay.
Where it kicks off at noon. Goes till I think 4:00 was the last one that I think was mentioned here.
Right.
So they're playing Lone Star Academy on the 23rd. Or actually, they actually have a couple of them. So the U15s play the Lone Star Academy away in Austin on the 23rd, and then on March 2nd and March 9th, they're home. At that point here. So looks like here they will have now the U12s. Yeah, so they have the same schedule. So they'll play the Solar Soccer Club, U13s and 15s and 14s. March 12th at Star, and on March 9th they play the Texans SC, Houston's, also at Star. But this weekend they will be away. So
okay.
But speaking of that, for this weekend here, San Antonio FC, there's actually a match that we can kind of talk about coming up against El Paso, and one that we will be able to see, unlike this past weekend where there were two matches at Toyota Field. One, St. Louis was involved in both, once against the Bold in St. Louis, which was closed door, but more importantly for us, San Antonio FC and St. Louis played two 60-minute games. The first one was 0-0, and the second one ended 1-0 with the goal by the trialist again. So that would be 2 goals for the trialist. And from my understanding, it almost was close to an own goal, but it was a cross that went in that magically found it in. So would love to tell you more, but we don't know.
Well, and you talk about, we can sort of talk about too, because obviously that home opener, or preseason home opener, I guess I should say, is against El Paso Locomotive, who we really don't have any history to base anything off of. So, I thought Jonathan Footy posted a great poll question kind of earlier in the week, talking about some of the rivalries with these new teams that are coming to the USL, mainly Austin and El Paso, and just kind of who you considered more of a rival. What did you think, Harry? Who do you consider more of a rival, Austin or El Paso?
Well, obviously Austin's going to be more of a rival. There's no, and even been, speaking with Edson with RGV, San Antonio dislike for Austin goes back to the Scorpions and the Scorpion years in Austin Aztec. So there's been that rivalry that's been there. You add in the sour taste of Austin FC, the MLS, being perception took away, which I don't really, foresee, because I don't think Garber wanted to come here personally, but that's a separate discussion. The Diego, Tier Pack, Sonny, aka Trialist, the original famous Trialist, up there. So it's that one's going to be hands down
The favorite.
The rival.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. Because the other reason why I know that is a lot of people, that don't normally go on away trips are going to go to the Austin.
Oh, absolutely.
Where they don't go down to RGV. People have already said, hey, they won't go to El Paso, even though it's a long drive, it's an 8-hour drive, but it's an easy drive, to and from. But yeah, it's, I think El Paso released their first podcast out today. Fortnum, sorry, I don't have the name on top of my head, but their rival is going to be probably more, obviously it's going to be New Mexico because they're just up the road from them. Now, could it develop on the pitch? That's possible. And we've seen that happen where on the pitch, it could develop. But, to me, like I replied back to Jonathan, I think it's more like the energy where, they're a rival, but they're not, to me, they're a secondary rival, where, you want to beat them, but if you had to choose between Oklahoma City and RGV, you'd pick Oklahoma City. So I think with El Paso, there'll be a rooting interest for them in some parts, especially against Austin and RGV. But when we go head to head, obviously, we hope they lose 10-0 or 20-0 like the team third division team in Italy did
in the first half. Yeah, and I think that's interesting because what creates a lot of rivalry, and it's interesting because they were talking about this on the Blitz on the way home today on ESPN Radio, and just kind of the fact that both teams almost have to win. You can't really have a rivalry that's just one-sided. Part of what makes it a rivalry is that both teams win. And I think that it's going to be interesting. As you mentioned, I'll take Austin over El Paso. But do you feel like RGV is kind of just being forgotten about in this? It seemed like in that first season, we were building this huge rivalry. And it's just, I don't know does anybody get excited about RGV anymore? Because they haven't won lately.
But that's not, if you really look at it, RGV owns the series record against San Antonio. They still own one more win over us than we do. So, and with RGV, I think what's hurt the rivalry is when they release a player, they magically end up on San Antonio.
Yeah. So it's
that, to me, that, Sebastian worked out well, but name another one that did. It hasn't. And we're going to find out with Kai Green this year. But it always seems like that we're getting, somebody cut that has MLS talent. So I'm not saying that they're not quality players, but, it's almost like it goes from, RGV to Houston to San Antonio to Austin, just in the player rotation. So I do think RGV will, as far as what the rivalry will be, kind of hurt a little bit. I think partially because I think, just with the closeness between San Antonio and Austin, if Austin has fans, and, I've yet to hear anything about supporters groups or anything like that. So I'm not sure how well they're going to be attended, in Austin. But I have a feeling when Austin travels down here, especially I think it's on a 4th of July weekend, or, I think there's fireworks for it, that there's going to be more fans that come down for that game that's ever been here for RGV. And that's the thing that disappoints me going both ways with RGV is, I know we've took a couple of buses down, or we took a bus down to there a couple of times, especially the first year. And I want to say the second year. But after that, really, there hasn't been between the teams that push to get fans to either side, which I think is what helps create that rivalry. If you have in the stadium or in the tailgate area, group of the Stampede and group of 210 Crocketeers and Mission 118, kind of having friendly banter. Like I said, one of the most famous, one of the best memories I have of the first years was the two supporter groups, drumming away in the parking lot. I think that was awesome. And then they did it again in the stadium, which, in the stadium was a little bit more tension filled because there was a little bit more alcohols consumed and there's player action on the field. So was a little bit more intense, but like I said here, it's that's the thing that I think that's missing from the RGV aspect that both sides haven't took advantage of is to develop that, to develop that history between the fan bases, because you don't really, I know you don't really, to me, I don't see a lot of communication that goes back and forth. Do you?
No, it's kind of funny you mentioned that first trip or whatever down there to the valley when we had the two groups out there in the parking lot and the state troopers and everything kind of marking off the intersection in between us. And that was when one member from the Stampede pulled down his pants and decided to moon us and then got arrested and taken to jail. So things got a little tense out there in the parking lot too, and there was plenty of alcohol involved. But I feel like Austin is going to be a bigger rivalry. I mean, I almost look at Phoenix now too, and you almost have to consider them a rival just because of the quality of talent. I mean, maybe not as much now with Billy coming back and stuff like that. Not as many players from previously on San Antonio. I don't know why that feels like such a rivalry to me. I guess just because of, Doer and maybe that's not as big of a rivalry as what I'm making it out to be. But
I think it's a rivalry on their side. But even it's kind of dined out because they've got more OC, they've got Vegas up the road. They're going to have New Mexico, which is closer, El Paso, which is closer. Because I know one of the cool things that Rising fans are going to do is they're actually going to take an Amtrak from Phoenix, take it into El Paso. So that'd be kind of a cool thing, especially with El Paso being called the Locomotives.
That is pretty badass.
It's to me, and I was looking at the prices, I was like, oh hey, I would have done
cheap
that.
As hell, yeah.
Because you're able to drink, assuming you don't get too out there and get belligerent and stuff like that. But to me, I think that's a cool thing that they're going to have. Where I think there is a rivalry there. But if to me, you talk about having to win. Phoenix hasn't really had the best record against us. Now, they did close down the Diego era last year, with the Phoenix event.
We won't talk about. You were there.
Yeah, it was a long drive back.
I bet, especially for the players.
And then, halfway in the middle of nowhere, Twitter's blowing up going, hey, have you checked out this? And I was like, oh, what? So, but yeah, that was interesting. But
let's get
it'll be interesting. Transaction wise, today we released a striker and got another striker. So we mutually terminated the loan with FC Atlas from Liga MX, so with Jair Barraza. Interesting. I don't think he ever played. He didn't play up in FC Dallas, unless he was a late substitute in which didn't get reported. And from what I've seen, I haven't been able to see if he played against St. Louis either. So it was a loan. Not sure what happened. I know Bruce was ahead of him as far as getting the second team
depth chart.
But coming over is Bradford Jameson, the fourth on loan from LA Galaxy. So a youngster that, from what I've read about, has talent. Unfortunately, has had a little bit of history with injuries. So that's why he hasn't really made it up to the Galaxy full time. So I do find it's interesting that they are sending him out of the Galaxy system, meaning not going down to Los Dos and giving him kind of a semi-fresh start. So hopefully he comes in with a chip on his shoulder with something to prove, because, I think if he could have a good year here, it could lead to future opportunities. If he doesn't make a mark here, I wonder if he'll quote unquote age out from the Galaxy system. So
well, he's 22 years old right now. So as you mentioned, it's kind of time for him to shine. Only 6 matches played, it looks like, last year in the MLS. So as you mentioned, kind of another San Antonio FC signing that a lot of potential, just not a lot of minutes. Which, I mean, so far, I think that's kind of looked pretty good for the club. What do you think, though? We were talking before the show, Alex Bruce, kind of a little bit of a local favorite here. You kind of mentioned that, they dropped a striker, signed a striker. Where does Alex Bruce fit into all this?
That's the question. Because to me, you don't take on a loan from an MLS team. And I understand, they're not going to promise, hey, we're going to play him, X. Well, I'm hoping they're not going to play him X number of minutes, or they're going to promise him that just because, I like that we're an independent team and Coach Powell and Coach Marcina get to pick who they want to play based on, or you'd have to say that he's on par or ahead of Bruce, right?
Right.
If he's MLS quality, if he's MLS quality, when he has minutes there, he has scored goals. Not a lot, but I think when I read the press release, he has scored some goals. That
the man has scored a goal before. And it's 20. Is this in his 23 years playing soccer?
Oh yeah, I mean with the Galaxy.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But I know he's one of the. When Los Dos had their fine academy with McBean and him, and I think there was one other that they thought they were going to be the golden generation, for the Galaxy. It just hasn't worked out for them due to various injuries and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think it's good news for Bruce, in my opinion.
We'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully we get a little bit more info on that, there at the preseason match. But that's going to be another storyline to follow this year. Bruce sticks around and what's going to happen with minutes. But let's cut this one a little short, man. I got to get there to the kiddos, but I just wanted to, kind of give you a chance. Any final thoughts or any subjects that we forgot to touch on before we wrap up the episode?
No, the only final thoughts is I thought it was kind of cool that we were ahead of the curve last week. We talked about Leo Torres, and when I don't know, did we cover that if he was going to be signed?
We did.
We had that discussion for that. So we had that. We talked about how the academy team was the fourth, rated fourth, and then the following day that SAFC came out saying, "Hey, we're rated fourth here." So. I thought it was like, hey, are they actually listening?
Of course. I'm telling you, man, Darren Powell watches this show. I'm telling you.
So,
he keeps asking about Todd.
Cool. But yeah, we actually didn't talk it because, Jose tweeted on it saying, hey, we talked about this last night about, Leo Torres being signed to the official contract. It dropped after we did the show. And, I know you and I have broached the topic a couple of times was, how soon do you bring these kids up if they're getting national teams? I guess the answer is immediately. So.
There you go. Question answered. Yeah, well, between that and then, just talking about the international matches, and stuff like that for Athenians, which I guess that one was kind of obvious a little.
Well, it was one we thought, but, nothing been announced. And I know you and I hadn't heard anything official, but it would make sense if you're going to make a splash on the rebirth of your team, and that's what you're known for, and you had that connection. As Jose mentioned last week, why wouldn't you tap into it, especially when there's other competition that doesn't tap into it, at this point. So absolutely.
Yep. So that'll be exciting. Again, March 3rd for that match. Like you mentioned, a lot of other tryouts starting to happen here in San Antonio. For any men's players ages 16 or older that are still looking for a team, I'm sure Samba still has some open tryouts. Like I mentioned, I know Corinthians have an open tryout on Saturday. The Runners, are always looking for players. Heck, if you just want to shoot us a message, I've actually had, one or two players from high school that have already graduated that just reached out to me, just kind of wondering, who's looking for people. So, if we can ever help out in that regard. Obviously, here on a local level, we're happy to put you in touch with whoever to go out there for a tryout. Unfortunately, I can't go try out for you, and I'm not sure you would even want that anymore. But I'll put you in touch.
You're the best one out of us.
No. So we do have a championship game, though, March 3rd, actually, that same Sunday. So I'm hoping for a 9 a.m. game, I guess, because we keep getting pushed back due to rainouts and everything, and we won the semifinals, so I guess we have one more game.
Yeah, well, AJ and Dana, I guess, are starting. They're going to be on the Runners in the West Creek League. So, really? highlights on that. I can talk about that for about 30 seconds. They had their first practice, and I was happy because the coaches, he knows more about soccer than the previous coaches had. So they were talking more about the dribbling and focusing on the offsides, and and I kind of almost got AJ in trouble because I was like, pass it, how the season kicks off. And
well, it'll be fun, man. Hopefully he enjoys it and has a good time.
Yeah, it kicks off this weekend, so we will be in.
Everybody for tuning in to the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. Huge shout out to our friends over there at POG Pod who shared our live feed. I appreciate that. They're always doing great things over there. Going to be doing something a little bit different, talking about a little bit more sports here than just soccer, which is always good. I've been to a Corinthians game. I've been to a Commanders game, and they're a lot of fun. So thank you guys for sharing our post. And this is the San Antonio, a $250 million bailout. Actually, I think I accidentally just clicked stop streaming. Oh, well.
Yeah, you're off.
Yeah, they said like a $250 million bailout. It's like, what other league can you find somebody to drop $250 million on like a lower league sport?
Well, I just said it wasn't a good look. You're back on now.
And we are live again. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain. All right, we're going to cut this out.